The spinal cord in cross-section has a very unique and notable anatomy. Recall that the spinal cord passes through the vertebral cavity and lies just posterior to the vertebral bodies of those vertebrae. Now, the spinal cord is bilaterally symmetrical. It means that the right side is a mirror image of the left side. So we call that bilaterally symmetrical. Let's first talk about the grooves or indentations that lie on the anterior and posterior aspects of the spinal cord. On the anterior side, along the entire anterior aspect of the spinal cord, there's a groove called the anterior median fissure. On the posterior aspect of the spinal cord, there is another groove called the posterior median sulcus. And in the middle of the spinal cord, there's a tiny hole called the central canal. Inside the central canal is a fluid called cerebrospinal fluid. In cross-section, the spinal cord has deep gray matter and superficial white matter. The gray matter looks kind of like a butterfly. And importantly, gray matter in general, whether we're talking about the spinal cord or the brain, is composed of densely packed neuronal cell bodies. So think back to our discussion on the neuron. And remember, neurons are pretty interesting cells that bear a cell body and then extensions going to and from that cell body. Well, the gray matter is where the cell bodies of those neurons reside. And that means that there's a lot of synapsing, particularly when we're talking about multipolar neurons. Remember, multipolar neurons are all motor neurons and all interneurons. And so the cell bodies that have lots of dendrites attaching to the cell body are going to be the site of synapse for other neurons that are either coming down from the spinal cord or coming in from the peripheral nervous system. Now, the gray matter is further subdivided into horns. On the anterior side, you have the anterior gray horn. Remember, the spinal cord is bilaterally symmetrical, so there's a right anterior gray horn and a left anterior gray horn. Sort of poking out to the side is the lateral gray horn. And there's a right lateral gray horn and a left lateral gray horn. On the posterior side, you have the posterior gray horn, and there's a right posterior gray horn and a left posterior gray horn. All of the white matter surrounds that gray matter. So there's a deep butterfly-shaped gray matter, in the center of which is that central canal and organized into horns. And then there's this superficial white matter organized into columns. Now, white matter is composed of tracts or columns of axons. So if the cell bodies reside in the gray matter, those axons, those myelinated axons, will then ascend to the brain or descend from the brain. So the white matter forms tracts that ascend, tracts that descend, all of which are composed of myelinated axons. Myelin is a fatty substance, and so it has a white appearance. That's what white matter is. And we have white matter in the brain as well. And when we look at the brain, we will see how it is organized. Like gray matter, white matter is organized directionally as well. So there is an anterior white column on the anterior side of the spinal cord. There are right and left anterior white columns. On the lateral aspect of the spinal cord is the lateral white column, the right lateral white column and the left lateral white column. And then on the posterior aspect of the spinal cord, there is a posterior white column, a right posterior white column and a left posterior white column. The columns are myelinated axons ascending to the brain or descending from the brain.